So today I'm pretty damn excited. It's finally the day to fix up a long-standing issue that we've had with Smokey ever since we've had it. Every time I've looked at this issue, it's made me cringe, but yeah, today's the day we're going to fix it. That issue being the hacked up front strut towers that somebody had taken a hole saw and a grinder to at some point and cut a bunch out of. So the problem with these is E46s have enough problems with their strut towers cracking as it is, let alone cutting out a giant chunk of it. So we're going to be getting on that and fixing them up, making it nice and strong. I've got some parts that I've had laser cut and designed in CAD, which was new for me, and we're going to be putting them on there, making it stronger than it ever was, and making it so I don't cringe every time I look at the front of the car. So you can probably already notice some of the work that's been going on here. Dad's welded and tigged this section back in that was cut out previously by someone else, and he's fixed all that up, which is nice. He's also cut out a little bit of this section. We did a whole bunch of measurements yesterday, fiddled around with the front end to see what direction we might need to move the strut to make sure we get the alignment settings that we want. And we sort of figured out that this general area was going to be where we needed to have the top of the camber top. So we've got that all in there. He's cut a little bit of that out, and I'll come around the other side. It hasn't been welded in yet, but it does show you guys a better example of what it's going to be like. So you can see these strut tops here. I had these designed in CAD, or I designed these in CAD and got them laser cut out. Obviously it's got my little drift nickname there. So that needs to be welded in now, and we're going to work out the rest of it as we go. I'm not sure if we're going to put a lip on it around the inside or not. We'll take a look and see how strong we reckon it is once it's all welded in. So I am so stoked right now. We've got these strut towers all fixed up. They're looking amazing. Dad's done a good job at TIG welding around the outside here and also on the inside. We think that's going to be plenty strong. We don't need to really run an inner ring on these like they do from factory, just because there's so much meat here holding it in place, and it is a lot more work to do. So we're not going to put the inner ring. The other thing that we have done is we've got rid of the ABS module that lives here, put in a couple of T-pieces, made a couple of lines to the master, and a bracket to support it all. So I think that's probably all we need to do with the stock brakes, but we do need to get onto the rear and plumb up that hydro. So as you probably saw in the previous episode, we've got all the handbrake pretty much done. The only thing we need to do now is make all the lines up to connect it all. We're working on that at the moment. We're going to start with the one that goes from the brake booster and heads out to the calipers. So here's the lines that we've been working on. We've started on the rearmost part of the line setup first. We've got this T-piece up here, and that runs through on this side. Runs really tight to the car because the fuel tank sits in here and makes everything rather tight. But it runs over here to this bracket, and then we've got a braided line that's going to go through to the calipers in there. It's going to use a banjo fitting and a nearly 90-degree turn on the end. And that should all work pretty well. I don't think it's going to hit any of the arms. I may end up cable tying it to the other hose just to be sure, but I think that's all looking pretty good. It's a nice welded bracket up there to hold everything in place. Then we've gone along here and we've either used riv nuts, or in this case we've actually welded a bolt to hold all the lines in place. On this side, similar sort of thing, comes around pretty close to the car so it doesn't hit the fuel tank. Then there's a bracket and a braided line and a 90-degree fitting with a banjo. So that's the hardest lines done. They need to be really tight when they run around the car there, because the fuel tank's in there pretty tight also. But they're out the way now. I'm going to get stuck into the other ones that I need to do more inside the cabin. Run from the hydraulic handbrake to the booster, and then from the booster to that T-piece. Right, so that line's done. Comes out the car, got a little grommet there for it. Goes up to the T-piece, sort of follows along the curvature of the car there, so pretty happy with that one. I'll show you guys inside. So here it is inside the car. You can see it's basically a 90-degree turn, goes through the grommet and out the car. Nice and neat. Next thing I need to think about is running a line from the handbrake here, along the trans tunnel, and then over to the booster. I will probably put a braided line section in it, I reckon, just so that I can move this handbrake forwards and backwards a bit without it being too much of an issue and having to rebend the line every time I make an adjustment. So yeah, that's probably the next thing I need to get onto. So I got a little excited and forgot to film the final fit up of this line. Don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I'm pretty pleased with how it came out. I think it looks really good. Ended up recycling a bit of braided line that goes from the master cylinder for the front brakes around to the ABS unit. Reused that, saved myself a couple of dollars. Now that that's in there, I can move the handbrake backwards and forwards a little bit and not have to rebend the line every time. I think that wraps up the hydraulic handbrake lines. Now to get onto some other bits and pieces. Today we're off to my fourth favourite place, U-Pull It. See if we can't get ourselves an Astra electric steering pump. Apparently the LS1s like to flog out at high RPM, and I like a high RPM. It's kind of my happy place, so don't think it would be a good match. So gonna go down and see if I can't rip one of them out of an old Astra while we're there. So come with me on this journey to the magical mystical land of U-Pull It, and see if we can't get those bits and pieces. So here we are at U-Pull It, and I'm here with an Astra, and down in there I believe is the power steering pump that I require. So now I've got to figure out how I'm going to get it out. I've been told it's not too hard, but we'll see how true that is. So here I am, my second Astra. First one I didn't film because I was trying to figure out how you get it out. Second one's going to be a spare for the car because I don't want to ever have one break and have to have nothing to power the power steering. So when I get a second one out, they're only like 59 bucks each. So I'll get cracking on this one and take you through it. So now I've got all the nuts off and all the lines and also the electrical. We can pull this thing out. So the unit's out now, which makes me pretty happy, and all that really needs to be done now is get the bracket out. I'm not going to get this bracket out because I've already got one. Got one to put in the car and one spare just in case I'm a drift day and it isn't loving life. So yeah, time to head home. So here we are, back in my garage. Still got grease all over my face after our U-Pull It mission. So I got back, gave those two power steering pumps a bit of a degreaser bath, and they both came up looking pretty good. So now I just wanted to test both of them, make sure they work. So now I've got these both here and they're both bench tested. I need to start figuring out how I'm going to mount this in the car and how I'm going to get the lines from the rack to this pump. So guess we'll head on over to the car and figure out how we're going to get that done. So what have you done thus far?
The original bracket come out here, so I've cut that bit of original bracket off. Screwy bolting down to the top, and over here it had a curved sort of bracket that come back over here, so I've cut that off and I've made up a leg on here, so it'll be able to go. I'm just making this so it sits a profile of the inner guard now. Then once that's done, I'll have these two mounting points, and I've drilled a hole in here, and I'll weld a plate on with a capsulated nut in. There's a box section down there that I'll weld that in, so we'll be able to it'll have 3 points of contact. So,
and that you've welded that extra bit on there, on the bottom there, so...
This?
Yep.
No, that was already there. So I'm just utilising what was already there.
Cool. So here's how the Astra pump sits in the car. It's obviously going to be a pretty busy corner, but I think that'll fit in there pretty well. I'll show you without the pump for a start, so you can sort of see the bracketing and the bolt location. So here it is with the Astra pump in place in the bracket. It's a fair bit of room down there. Should be neat and tidy. The loom's going to have to run around it, which shouldn't be too much of an issue, and it'll run through that hole there. So yeah, real happy with that. Plenty of room for the lines to come out the pump, run along the rail here and down to the rack. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Well, today's a pretty special day. It's starting to feel like this build's coming together a bit quicker now. We've got a big piece of the puzzle right here. This is the engine that in the second episode we drained all the water out of. So this is the 5.7 litre. It's come back from the engine builder. Still standard rods and pistons, but it's got a lot of other bits and pieces just to make it a bit more spicy. So it's got cams, ported heads, 11:1 compression. I think it's got LS1 lifters and upgraded push rods. So should be good for hopefully about 300 rear wheel kilowatts and make this beast here live up to its name. So going to put this in the car now. Righto, so the engine's all in the car. Obviously we've fitted this thing in plenty of times before, so it all fits pretty good. The thing I'm working on at the moment is the front drive assembly. Obviously we're not running any AC being a drift car, but I've also decided to ditch the standard power steering pump for the LS. Those things are basically junk for drifting. It seems like every friend that I've got that's got an LS based car has had one of those give out within a couple of events, and I don't really want that to happen to me. So I'm going to go with the tried and true method of putting an Astra pump in, and I'll probably mount it in up the back there in that corner. The other thing I've done is I've bought a idler pulley from Tough Mounts. You don't have to run one of these if you get rid of power steering, but what I've found and what it looks like on the internet is you don't get a lot of the belt actually touching the water pump if you just get rid of that pulley on this side. So what I've done instead is bought this Tough Mounts pulley. Should mean that we get plenty of purchase of the belt on the water pump, and hopefully that'll mean no squealing or any other rubbish. So that should fix that up. The next thing I need to do and think about is putting the loom on the engine and then figuring out where I can run the computer, because obviously the loom is going to dictate where I put the computer. So hopefully going to be able to run the loom through that hole there and then mount it on top of the trans tunnel underneath the dash. But that's going to depend on the amount of loom, and I need to test that because I'm going to be really annoyed if I mount the computer somewhere and there's not enough wiring to get to it. So yeah, next thing on the list, time to get busy. We've got the loom in. We're thinking we're probably going to mount the fuel pressure regulator there. Obviously got the Astra pump and then the loom going over the top. So I roughly got the loom sitting in the right place. Not all the connectors are done up, but there's enough here, particularly the injectors and the coil pack, that I know roughly where it's going to run. Then we've got the excess computer side of the loom here, and that's going to be probably a little higher than where it's sitting at the moment. We'll use P-clips to hold that up. It'll run behind the Astra pump and then to a connector just that is going to sit on top of that hole there that's there from the standard car. So I want to run sort of a firewall bulkhead connector because I don't want to have to be pulling through the connectors from the computer through the firewall every time I want to take the engine out, because that seems like a pain in the ass. Well, I think that just about does it for this episode. I want to be driving this car for the 2021 SA Drift Series, and we just finished off the 2020 series, so I've got a bit of spare time now, but the other part of me knows that it's only a couple of months, or probably 3 or 4 months, until I need to be driving this car again, so lots to get done. I need to get the engine bay and in the cabin painted, because I know that I need it looking half decent in there. So to do that, I need to get all the welding, grinding and hole drilling done, which we're working our way towards. So yeah, making good progress. I'll see you on the next episode of Smokey and the One-Armed Bandit.